Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start by thanking my colleagues, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, Pascrell, and Kaptur, for being champions, for being advocates, for being leaders on such an important issue. We are here to talk about an effort to make our financial system more accessible and more equitable. Today, 1 in 4 Americans and nearly half of Black and Latino households are unbanked or underbanked, either because the community doesn't have a bank or because they don't have funds to access banking services. This inequity affects rural and urban communities alike. 90% of zip codes without banks are in rural areas, and banks are rarely found in low-income neighborhoods. That leaves families in those communities with nowhere to turn but to predatory lenders, predatory practices, who charge them interest rates that can be 20 times higher than the average credit card interest rate. Right now, these unbanked families are forced to spend $100 billion every year on payday loans, check cashing services, and even overdraft fees just to access their own hard-earned money. This, unfortunately, pushes more and more families into a never-ending cycle of poverty. Many have also had to forfeit part of their stimulus checks to these services. It is expensive to be poor in America. We have to change that, and we can start by using a service that's already in every zip code, the U.S. Postal Service. The U.S. Postal Service has the real estate, the workforce, the know-how, the experience, and the authority to do this. They already process $20 billion in money orders every year and are well equipped to expand these services to offer other non-bank financial services. Today, we are calling for a pilot program to provide non-bank financial services, including surcharge-free ATMs, wire transfers, cash checking, and bill payment at post office locations in at least 5 urban and at least 5 rural zip codes. In New York, these pilot programs could run everywhere from rural upstate communities where banks have been replaced with costly automatic kiosks to the Bronx, where in some neighborhoods 3 in 10 families do not have access to bank accounts, despite living just miles from the financial center of the world. This pilot program will not only help us begin to address systemic inequality in the financial system, but it will also create a much-needed source of revenue for the U.S. Postal Service. We are asking that the fiscal year 2022 Financial Services and General Government Appropriations Bill allocate $6 million to the U.S. Postal Service to carry out these pilot programs. In 2015, the U.S. Postal Service Office of the Inspector General found that offering these expanded financial services at the U.S. Postal Service would generate $1.1 billion in annual revenue for the U.S. Postal Service after 5 years. This pilot program will allow us to take a critical step towards reintroducing postal banking. Putting a nonprofit bank in every post office would generate up to $9 billion of revenue each year for the U.S. Postal Service, allowing it to remain operational without making cuts to services or raising prices. And it would allow people of every income level to access low-cost banking services like small dollar checking, savings accounts, and low-interest loans. Those services will allow them to access capital and begin to accrue wealth, and help us put payday lenders and other predatory businesses out of business overnight. Expanding financial services at the post office is an elegant and simple solution to the challenges our postal system and our financial system are facing. And we already know that it works. The U.S. Postal Service offered postal banking from 1911 to 1966, and it helped millions of low-income families survive and make it through the Great Depression and 2 world wars. It's America's most successful experiment in financial inclusion ever. At a time when the U.S. Postal Service is in desperate need of more revenue, and growing number of families in both urban and rural America are in desperate need for access to basic banking, this is a perfect solution that I urge my colleagues to support. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague in New York, Representative